Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Good morning, Alice. Not too bad, thank you. Yourself?
Yes. Well, I'm sitting here at home since the middle of March, and
Oh dear.
I find life challenging at times, but and I miss my team dearly, I must say. But today marks a new development. The hairdressers have opened again, so a lot of people see some light at the end of the tunnel. And how's that with you?
Well, fairly similar, I must admit. I mean, again, Germany is now relaxing the lockdown rules. I am in the office, but I have spent considerable time in the home office. Just everything you've said before, missing the team, missing the people, and also finding life very challenging because of video conferences like this, and telephone conferences, but not being able to really connect with people, to sort of do everything remotely. It's not always easy, is it?
I totally agree. It's a whole new life, and even after such a long experience in the office, you see what the difference it makes when you don't have your team right next to you. Um, I think a lot of us are experiencing challenges, and the economy is in dire straits. We hear all the time, and a lot of concern is, of course, what will happen in the near future when it comes to the businesses in our respective countries. How's that with you?
Yeah, we see a market uptake in work actually. It's it's not as sharp as many have anticipated. There are more sort of approaches, more inquiries, but at the moment we do not really see the sort of anticipated market uptake in insolvencies. There are sectors that do suffer from the current COVID crisis, namely retail, for instance, when you shut down businesses, when you shut down the shops. But at the same time, the rent has to be paid, the landlord has to be paid. But obviously, it is causing a lot of problems, and cash is in cash is short and in high demand. So we do see that, but at the moment, it's not necessarily as dramatic as one might have expected. Everybody seems to expect that the real caseload, the real insolvencies, we will see at the end of the year, probably the beginning of next year, when the rescue packages or the rescue funds that are available at the moment have expired and businesses are still struggling, maybe lack of demand or even continued restrictions, and then we expect a lot of insolvencies and a lot of court filings.
Yeah, well, it's quite similar here, I must say. At the moment, we do not really see an uptake in insolvency cases. I mean, the appointments are still there, but they are not higher than they were previously. But I think we expect after summer, when all the government packages are ended, then there will be a moment where a lot of companies will struggle with their doing business in a different environment, we think.
Yeah.
Especially
Well,
also a lack of demand will cause a lot of retailers to to struggle and maybe to fall over. But we will see. It is right now we expect a lot of work. We have enough work. That is something that you can be grateful for too. But it is not as yet the deluge of insolvencies that everybody is expecting. So more the rest of the year might that might happen. Of course,
yeah, same here.
Yeah, a lot of things are, the governments are really trying, in the Netherlands is really trying to keep businesses afloat with a lot of money. We have different schemes there in place that can help a lot, or that is at least the expectations. But in the end, the businesses itself, as you say, they need to repay their loans and do everything that is necessary. And then, well, we will see what happens then.
Absolutely, but then when you say sort of rescue funds and the government has made monies available, what sort of packages have you introduced? Well, not you, but your government. Presumably, there is a fiscal stimulus of sorts to
Yes.
help struggling businesses through this difficult time.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, are some fiscal packages in the sense that we do not have to pay all the fiscal obligations right now. They are postponed to a later date, and also there is a possibility of receiving funds from the government for the loans that you or not for for the loans, as well as a kind of a guarantee, but also some help in paying the salaries of your employees. If you have if you don't have any turnover, you might receive 90% of the salaries of your employees during a certain amount of time. So there are fiscal stimulus is there. There are also loans and also guarantees. So you can there's different ways of receiving money when you're a business without any turnover at this point in time, especially for instance when you are a restaurant or a hotel chain, or those branches that are really severely hit, you can apply for fiscal and also normal help from government in a really unprecedented way. I mean, we have never seen anything like this before, and it's quite generous. But at the same time, this crisis is unprecedented, and there's you need different measures for a situation like this.
No, I couldn't agree more. It sort of is interesting, is it not? Because I seem to remember a time when, you know, all the countries had their own ideas and their own strategies as to how one could tackle a crisis. But in this case, what I hear and what I understand, it's fairly similar throughout Europe, because everything you have just described is fairly similar, or if not identical, to what we have done here in Germany. I mean, for a change, end of March, the German Parliament actually within a week, 1 week, pushed 6 bills through the German Parliament just to tackle the crisis. One act to sort of establish what is called an economy stabilization fund, and the idea was to actually sort of have a pot of money available, 156 billion euros, to help struggling businesses.
Yes.
And those are not necessarily always paid out as cash, but state guarantees, as you have said, and then the federal states have sort of added to it with their own funding programs. But it's also, as you said, sort of helping struggling businesses in that you can, instead of making staff redundant, you send them home, introduce what is called a sort of reduced working hour scheme, and then the government would pay the salaries up to a certain percentage. Then there are loans made to businesses, sometimes even government grants made available to self-employed people and others, temporarily suspension of repayments of consumer loans, that sort of thing. So we have also introduced a lot of fiscal stimulus and sort of introduced a lot of rescue packages to help keep the economy afloat. Yes. And to avoid, obviously, huge scale redundancies, which would really hurt the economy. Once it recovers, we hope, we will be able to sort of deal with the debt that people and businesses have taken on, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I also have seen is the courts. How are they? Well, we did not really introduce anything. There were, of course, bills about these new stimulus, but not about any insolvency changes. We have seen the courts act quite slowly here in the Netherlands in this new situation. At the moment, we see a lot of cases that are only written. So I'm waiting for an appeal process on Thursday, but it has been written. Normally we would go to court and see the judges, but this time it's only in written statements. So the courts are quite slow to react on this new situation. But there were no changes to our insolvency law. How's that in Germany?
Well, we've introduced quite a few changes, actually. They are temporary changes, but as far as Germany is concerned, dramatic changes. One of the acts I referred to earlier was actually sort of an act to mitigate the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic in the fields of civil law, insolvency law, and criminal proceedings. I mean, look, we're Germans, right? We are more focused on precision, not necessarily on being succinct. So that is quite a mouthful. But it's an act that was designed to help, well, predominantly management of struggling businesses. In short, there is a suspension on the filing obligations. As you know, we have a fairly strict regime, an insolvency regime. It's been relaxed, but there's still this statutory obligation that management has to monitor the cash position of the company permanently. And if the company is technically insolvent, you have to file within a very short period of time. If you do not, then there is an exposure to civil liability and in some cases even criminal liability. Now that has been relaxed dramatically in that the obligation to file has been suspended to the 30th of September of this year, provided that the insolvency has been caused by COVID. And obviously, you know, you ask, well, how can I demonstrate that? There is a statutory presumption that a business is struggling because of COVID if it was not insolvent, if it was not cash flow insolvent, I should say, by the 31st of December of last year. Okay. So if it was okay, if it was clean by the end of last year, then there's this presumption, and it's almost impossible to rebut that presumption. So all of the businesses now will probably be able to say, listen, the main cause for our struggles is actually COVID, because demand is not there, businesses have to be closed, all sorts of problems occurred, and therefore, you know, management is no longer under this Damocles sword that is coming down on them, or threatens to come down on them. Yeah. But also sort of that is accompanied by a relaxation of the avoidance rules. So basically antecedent transactions, always a big thing in Germany. It's no longer as strict as it used to be, again, temporarily suspended to the 30th of September. And that even applies to repayments up until the 30th of September 2023, I think. If a loan is extended, fresh money is injected now, yes, up to the end of September of this year, then any repayments for the next 3 years will benefit from an exemption on avoidance actions. So that's actually very dramatic. And it would also help to actually sort of give struggling companies a breathing space. It would help keeping struggling businesses afloat. It should also attract lenders, namely banks, to actually extend new loans and helping those businesses, because this risk of avoidance actions is no longer, well, it's not necessarily gone away completely, but it's fairly, the risk is reduced dramatically. So that's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, well, in the Netherlands, we did not see any changes to the insolvency laws, but still, when it comes to avoidance rules, people can, or who are insolvency practitioners, they need to prove that there was something wrong. And of course, if you are the management or the party in this kind of transaction, you can always try to prove that this whole transaction was due to the COVID-19 situation. And I'm sure that there will be some litigation regarding avoidance, but I'm also quite sure that judges will be lenient when it comes to this extraordinary circumstances. Although we hear some noises about people who are quite well, they warn that also the money that is distributed by the government can also, that there can be fraudulent acts, that people who are not really able to tick all the boxes still get the money because it has been given out so quickly. And in those circumstances, if these companies fail, well, I as an insolvency practitioner will have to look into the circumstances, of course. But I'm quite sure that the rules are quite flexible. I mean, if you're confronted with situations like this, you will be acting as you think proper, and the judges will have an opinion about it too.
I would have thought so. Yeah, it's also. I mean, fortunately, the German legislator actually sort of produced some sort of explanations accompanying this Insolvency Relaxation Act. Let's put it that way, and it's very clear. It's been stressed on a number of in a number of paragraphs that. The government wants to keep struggling businesses alive. And the burden of proof is firmly on the party alleging that the problem was not COVID related. And it's actually very, very difficult to provide the necessary evidence. It's nigh impossible, I would say. But I do expect some litigation to come out of it. And not least because, as you said, some businesses do not even qualify for the government rescue packages, or at least in practical terms, what we see here is that banks in certain circumstances and instances are actually reluctant to extend the rescue funds because under the rescue scheme, the state basically guarantees in various degrees 80% of the loan is guaranteed by the government, or 90%, sometimes even 100%. But even the 20% residual risk or 10% residual risk, some banks are reluctant to take that on. And therefore, although the German government has introduced these grand schemes, sometimes the money doesn't materialize. It's not being extended to businesses for various reasons.
Okay, what are the consequences of that? I mean, those businesses will then go under, or then they won't be able to survive, or what is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, it's actually, talking about insolvency, and there's still a stigma attached to insolvency, certainly in Germany, but certainly as far as COVID is concerned, the good news is everybody now understands that, in a situation like this, in circumstances like we have at the moment, sometimes it's inevitable, and there's more understanding, more acceptance of insolvency proceedings now, if it comes to that.
We have in this span of time, our parliament is currently discussing the so-called VOA, which is the Dutch scheme, so to say.
Oh, right.
And they are considering the Dutch scheme is legislation aimed for businesses at businesses who want to do an out-of-court restructuring, and it is a very flexible piece of law, and everybody's having high expectations for companies, even and especially in this COVID-19 pandemic. Because it is flexible for companies, flexible instrument for companies to reorganize and also, reorganize your debt. And there is flexibility in the whole legislation when it comes to forming classes, or the way it is judged by the courts. It is quite an extraordinary piece of law, and we are hoping that it will be implemented before or in summer, so that we can really use it at this point in time. It's interesting to see what the parliamentary discussion will lead to. But the main hope of all insolvency practitioners is that it is implemented really soon, to give us one more tool in our toolbox to reorganize. And that is very important in the Netherlands, I think.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. I'm impressed. I mean, and I envy you. I envy you in the Netherlands, I must admit. I mean, I've been crying out for, let's call it a German scheme of arrangement for years now, because I think we do need something that provides for exactly what you've just described. And of course, the EU preventive restructuring framework will at some point rescue us all. But unfortunately, Germany is not as far as advanced as the Netherlands. That said, I understand there is a draft bill available in the Federal Department of Justice. It was supposed to be presented to a group of industry experts, not necessarily discussed with them, but presented to them to get an immediate feedback. But that's been cancelled due to Corona, and I don't really know what the status is. I was or I had hoped that we would also sort of introduce, some form of pre-insolvency mechanism or rescue tool by the middle or certainly towards the end of this year. But because of Corona, I'm not sure that is going to happen. And the most interesting thing I just picked up from your explanation is, as office holders, you are actually crying out for such an additional tool. It's another string to your bow, which I firmly believe that is correct. We are seeing a lot of resistance here in Germany from insolvency administrators, the office holders, who actually fear that this particular instrument would actually take matters and work away from them. And I, for the life of me, I don't understand it. I just don't. I think it's, as I said, it's just another string to your bow. It's another tool.
Yes.
So why not use it?
Yes.
But
and
it's,
also, if at least my idea is that everybody learns, if you have a company and you need to find the best way of helping it, and that can either be by an out-of-court restructuring or an in-court restructuring. And I think if you're doing in-court restructuring, or at least act as a trustee or office holder, you can learn quite a lot of doing out-of-court restructurings as well, because you know exactly what way the parties are going, etc., and also know the struggles and the things that are important to avoid in these kind of proceedings. So no, I don't see any conflict there, I must say.
Wow, Alice, I've always said you're my favorite Dutch practitioner, so I need to bring you over to Germany and sort of give some lectures to some of the office holders over here who always fear, they say, that such an instrument is going to be, there is an abusive process. They fear an abusive process, and they say, businesses that should go under will artificially continue or will be allowed to artificially survive because of this process, and everybody will be poorer for it, which I really don't understand and don't sign up to. So you need to come to Germany and actually give some lectures and make people see reason, because I failed miserably.
Well, Frank, I think it was lovely talking to you, and I hope that we'll see each other really in person soon. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, and really, I hope to. It is a challenging time. We should have been in Copenhagen and met there, but let's hope that matters improve and we will be able to, see one another again, not only via video but also in person.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Until then, bye-bye, Alice.
Bye-bye.